I think. So, I mean, you're going back to a live crowd that doesn't, you know, you're not sure how they're going to react. It's new territory. You're in a big stadium. You've got all this crazy production. You're trying to put it over. So I think that the style of matches, again, all the way through, were very much like house show matches. They were very much for the live crowd. I don't think it wasn't a storyline night. I think like you could, for most of these matches, and there were a couple that did tie in with the current story, but for most of them, I felt like, even though they were kind of a lot of rematches from WrestleMania, I did feel like they were standalone and they weren't really part of the storyline, the current storyline of WWE. So I think if you took yourself out of that, and you wasn't just watching from Raw this week, of what was being said, I think you were going to be okay watching this, and I just took it for what it was. So for me, this cruiserweight match, first off, I was pleased that it was actually, it was on the main pay-per-view for a change, and yeah, cool to see Kalisto back in it. I mean, I guess people will argue, is he above this? But again, this division really needs as much as they can possibly get. I felt like it was a good match. There were a few moments that were a little bit sort of not so great, but I think overall in the big spectrum, match that just went under just past 10 minutes, were delivered very well. Again, for me, this match, I give this a 3.5 as well. I felt it was decent, and I felt both guys, delivered very well on a solid match, a cruiserweight style match. So Cedric Alexander, obviously going over on this one as the champion, retaining this belt. This followed up by the WWE Raw Tag Team Championship match, which I think for most of the fans, we believed that this was going to be, the match that we all kind of knew, because the bar are now obviously on SmackDown and Bray and Matt are on Raw. So, were we expecting anything less? With this one, I was really disappointed, just in the sense that you've got two guys that are kind of really, they're supposed to be new. We're supposed to be really into what they're doing, Matt and Bray, and I'm just like, oh my god, I don't know where it's all going. I felt like they were trying to get the fans in, but the reaction was just like, the Saudi Arabia fans just didn't. This was a match that they could have done without on the night. Personally, I think with the Hardys in this kind of territory, Matt Hardy and Bray, I'm just not sure that it was right to put these two guys in the spot like this. I felt bad for the bar because it just wasn't that great. They worked some. They worked a few spots in this that were just like when Bray was kind of doing the thing on the turnbuckle and going backwards over it. I was just like, and Matt tags in doing it. I know it was trying to they were trying to make it look kind of neat and new, but it just wasn't coming across for me. It wasn't a terrifically great match. Very very rough, very scruffy is this match. Definitely not one of my favourites. Although, again, like I said earlier, I took it for a house show value. Maybe I wouldn't have been that disappointed. But you've got to tie that up with the fact that this is, claiming to be the world, the greatest Royal Rumble. So, for me, fans unfortunately weren't really into this. I don't think that they really thought about this one enough in terms of the presentation, which is a bit of a shame. So this only got a 2 for me, and that's been a little bit generous in this one. Obviously, Bray, Matt, new tag team champions. Is it a big deal? Perhaps, but for me, it was a little bit like we knew what was coming here on that one. Next up is the WWE United States Championship match between the champion Jeff Hardy and Jinder Mahal. So, the US title again, similar to the last match, unfortunately, is that they're really there really wasn't a great deal of things. I mean, a few things went terribly wrong. I think everybody who said about Jinder Mahal completely botching one of the things. When he was supposed to take he didn't take enough contact when Jeff was trying to do the move. I mean, it was just, that looked terrible, and I don't understand why. I've seen that happen so many times where, okay, the contact isn't made, and it's so obvious that contact isn't made, and you still, and then, it's almost like he realised it, and then for some reason he still thinks, oh, but I better go down anyway because he's got to do the next spot. Like, I just wish sometimes they'd think a little bit more on the fly and think, oh, actually, you didn't get me. I'll go into another move, and then we'll get back to that spot again, a little bit later. But like, just to kind of stand there and think, oh, you didn't get me. Now I'll go down. Now you don't. It was just horrible. It was horrendous. It was not a great advert at all for wrestling. I felt like a really scruffy match. Again, I don't know if this was just Jeff Hardy and Jinder just don't really match in terms of like chemistry, possibly. Just nothing really. I think like the fans. I'm not sure whether they were into this or not. It was very difficult to tell. I don't really want to. I don't really want to. Put too much in it or without it. But certainly, very very not the greatest working for these two guys in my opinion. So yeah, bit of a bad one, a bit of a disaster. This actually only gets a 1.5. This match went 6 minutes 10 seconds. It was just not that great, unfortunately, for what they were trying to do. Really unfortunate, but not the greatest there. So okay, moving on to this, obviously, as we go along through this Greatest Royal Rumble. Just onto the next match is we go on to the WWE SmackDown Championship, which Tag Team Championship, which of course is the Bludgeon Brothers up against the Usos, and oh man, this was just. I mean, it's like I don't know. This wasn't great either. This, like I say, this just smelled of just absolute house show style, but really bad ones and quicker. I think basically because, I mean, I don't really know why every title had to be defended and you had to have like an extra 20 men in this Royal Rumble. I don't know if this is just something like that whoever put it over there and paid all this money for it, just they said like, we want this, we want this, we want this. So it's kind of like mixing Night of Champions with a Royal Rumble, and it's like a hybrid of the whole thing. It was very surreal. So yeah, it just seemed like even though there were supposed to be stakes at this, because of Backlash next week, it was like, no, we're not really gonna see many changes here. So a little bit harsh on the guys because they can only deliver so much. Were some good little moments in it. I liked the way the Usos come off, but I absolutely knew the Bludgeon Brothers were going over and retaining the titles. Wasn't a particularly long match, obviously. I think it's more like just over 5 minutes, something like that. Very rushed, and yeah, not great. I give this about 2 stars. Not terrific either. Really from a solid match point of view, but you've got to remember, folks, this is not WrestleMania. This is not a normal type of pay-per-view in that sense. A little bit disappointing there. Next match up, then we've got the WWE Intercontinental Championship ladder match. This is between Seth Rollins and Finn Balor, The Miz, and Samoa Joe. And I'll tell you one thing. Joe, since he's come back on Raw and now he's on SmackDown, I'm so into him. I think like he's looking the best he's looked. He's cutting some great promos. Really enjoying his work at the moment. Again, felt like there was only one winner. This was a good match. There were some moments in the match that things didn't quite go as planned. Like the ladder wasn't sitting where it needed to for spots But the difference between this and what happened with Jinder earlier in the match with Jeff Hardy is that There was a moment, I believe, let me get this straight, when I think it was Samoa Joe was wanting to slam Finn Balor into the corner, but the ladder had kind of fallen down. But instead of like putting it back up and making it look obvious, he actually just smashed Finn Balor on his back, and he was literally laying out during this whole thing. So, it might not have been great for Finn's back, but it's certainly innovative and thinking on the spot, and that's probably the difference to why this got over a little bit more. I think the fans were into this. From what I understand, a few of the fans that emailed me that actually went said that this was one of the more exciting matches of the night. In fact, for a lot of the fans, they actually said it was the best match. So that's how much people enjoyed that. Certainly from that point of view, some great moments in it. Like I said, was a really cool part away to sort of ending. It was like a nice finish to the match. I felt like there wasn't too much hanging about. Sometimes you see that so many times, and I think like the fans were back into the show, I think, after this a little bit, and certainly helped the pacing of it. For me, this was a top match. I mean, again, I think you've got the gimmick involved of the ladder, so it does kind of like, it's always going to have a little bit more about it. I think this one, for me, 3.5 stars, almost a 4. I think the only reason it doesn't get a 4 is perhaps there wasn't the feeling that anyone could win. That was unfortunate. I felt like Seth was winning this all the time. So Seth Rollins retaining the belt match, it just goes under 15 minutes. Really well done though. Really well booked, and I felt like very minor issues in this, and everything came off really, really well. Really enjoyed the match, just sitting there watching it. It was really good. And now after that, we got like 4 guys who came out that are signed after the tryout in Saudi Arabia that they'd done earlier in the week. They do this spot where they get cut short in promos in the ring, and then we get the Davari brothers coming out, and it's kind of like one of those typical segments through the show. Heels. You knew exactly what was going to happen. Obviously, the 4 guys all got their little bit in and sent the guys from Iran back home. I know that like there were some tweets posted by Iran that seemed to like take huge offence to this, as if it was kind of like a real dig on them. They ended up tweeting something along the lines of like, we don't do the wrestling fake, you might win us, but obviously in the Olympics we got the best. So you can tell there's internal beef going on there. Not really sure it required that, but anyway, this is what's going to happen when you do spots like this. To me, it could have done without it. I just think this was so classic Vince. This setup, I think it would have been nice to see something a bit more unique. It probably would have played better if something like Elias had come out and not really made it any... Like, the moment you start bringing out a flag, especially a flag of a country that is very close by, who has some kind of history with that country, and you're trying to get a reaction because it's going to get booed. I just think you're kind of asking for trouble, and I just think it was something they could have really done without, to be quite honest with you. But in any case, now before we move on to the next match, folks, I just want to have a little time out, let you guys know what is coming up on the podcast, because next month, and it's literally only next week, but in that month we are going to be dropping the most requested thing I think we've had in this podcast for some time. Yes, myself and Matt, we are going all in on No Holds Barred. We're going to review the full film to our best, as we did on our other podcast, which was titled All In, but we are going to No Holds Barred, a film that featured Hulk Hogan as Rip, and of course his arch nemesis in the film, Zeus. We're going to be reviewing that in May. Other stuff coming up for myself and Matt in terms of the podcast. We're going to be myself and Matt are going to be attending Raw when it comes to the UK. Matt's actually going both nights. He's doing Raw and SmackDown